Isn't it a dangerous task to try to get behind the text of Scripture as we have it? If we try to reconstruct Paul's theology, wouldn't we just be mirroring our own beliefs and projecting our beliefs onto him rather than really getting a picture of what his theology was about?
Well, the fact of the matter is, if you don't try to find out what the theology is that's behind every verse or that's supporting every verse, you're just as likely to import your own assumptions into it so that the the verse will just reflect your own mirror image. You're far better off, I think, in trying to, all we're talking about is finding the larger context that makes every text have its meaning. And it means some imagination. It means sometimes paying more attention to things that Paul doesn't seem to talk about as much as some other things. But it means, I think it gives us the potential of understanding him in a deeper way. For instance, in the video, we talked about how important his time references are. Well, Paul doesn't sit down and say, now, before you can understand anything else about me, you need a little primer on my view of history, where it's been and where it's going. But those references to this age and the age to come, they show up at such pivotal places that it's hard, once you've looked at them closely, it's hard to fail to see that they make a big difference in helping us understand why he says the things that he does. If you don't try to get at the overall architecture of his thinking, which is implicit rather than explicit, you wind up with things that just don't make any sense. For instance, like in videos to come, we'll talk about the differences between the way he approaches the Galatians on the one hand and the way he approaches the Corinthians on the other hand. Well, to the Galatians, he says things like, well, circumcision is nothing, uncircumcision is nothing. All that matters is faith working in love, or all that matters is new creation. Well, to the Corinthians, he seems to say exactly the opposite. He says, circumcision counts for nothing, uncircumcision counts for nothing. All that matters is keeping the commandments. Well, which is it, Paul? Is it just faith working in love and new creation? Or is it keeping the commandments of God? Well, what we have to understand is that these are two groups that are messed up about the whole question of time. The Galatians are living as though the cross had never yet happened, and they needed to add to Christ's work, their own shedding of their blood through circumcision, and they're thinking about going back under the law. They're thinking about going backwards in time. And Paul says, no, don't go back there. There's no life there. The Corinthians, by contrast, think that they're so far down the line in terms of time that they don't even need a resurrection. They think they've already arrived. They think they're king's kids. So they think that they are beyond what is written. And to them, Paul says, oh, no, 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 no. You need to obey the commandments of God. So he says things that seem just the opposite, but he says them to people because they're messed up on the question of time. He wants to pull both of those groups into this sloppy overlap period. And if we didn't do the hard work of trying to get to the architecture that holds all those texts together, we would just be left either befuddled, or we would just make those texts say whatever we want them to mean. And I don't think that's really very wise.